Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's all great and wonderful and fantastic. It is super freaking cold here today. And I stalled really hard on reading the Wheel of Time. We talked a couple of weeks ago. I read The Eye of the World. I was hoping to read the first two books before the show comes out, and I ended up reading The Eye of the World in like 5 days or 6 days. And I did a little review on it because it was, it hit me with a lot of nostalgia because I first read that book as a teenager, and it was really it captivated me. And so I fully expected to dive into book two with the same vigor and really plow through book two, but I stalled hard. I'm at like 35% right now, and I don't know, like, the reason that I've never made it through this, so, okay, let's back up. I think that Robert Jordan initially said that The Wheel of Time was supposed to be 5 books, and then it was supposed to be 7 books, and then it was going to be done when it's done. And it's turned out to be 14 books, and had to be finished by a different author who wrote 3 books in the series because there was just way too much stuff to wrap up. And for some, that's a problem because there is a lot going on in the series. For others, that's the beauty of it. There's just this vast diversity of characters who all have their own significant goals and plot lines and importance to the story. And if you like keeping track of that sort of thing, it's for you. The problem is, the reason that I've never made it through the whole series is Robert seemed to want to write it so that you could start at any point and read a story, right? You could start at book 4 and you would understand what's going on. And the way he did that is by including a whole lot of reminders in each book. So book 1 is considered to be like a very derivative and one of the weaker books in the series, which I agree with. And books 2 and 3 are supposed to be some of the better books in the series. And there's a lot going on in book 2. But book 1 is mostly just a whole bunch of exposition, trying to introduce you to a world that you are completely unfamiliar with terms that are completely unfamiliar to you, and with a societal hierarchy that is completely unfamiliar. And so there's really just a lot of characters spewing stuff at you so that you can get caught up as the reader. And then book 2 just takes the reins and goes. And you get introduced to a whole bunch of new stuff, but it's no longer as hand-holdy as it was in book 1. There's no longer like, let's stop by this fire and have a conversation about what's going on. There's not time for that because the world is crushing forward at an abrupt pace. So what Robert does is at the start of each book, every time he reintroduces you to something, he explains it. And it becomes really tedious after a while. Especially because I had just read The Eye of the World and then jumped right into this, I'm having to read through these paragraphs where he's re-explaining something I just read yesterday. And, if you were reading these books years apart, as they were published every other year or something, every year, then maybe that's good. Maybe that would help you. Oh, I remember now. And like I said earlier, if you jump in at book 4, you're not really in the dark because he goes on and explains a lot. And that's also been my biggest pet peeve with this series every time I've tried to read it, is getting through that. Because I read at such an rapid pace, and I could fly through these books in just a few months. I could read all 14 of these books in just a few months. But at that pace, that tedium of getting through all that exposition, so I'm not been excited for it. I don't know why. This is an exciting part of the story. It really is. It's really fun, and the characters are still finding themselves. The characters are still finding themselves all the way through the end, but, well, I don't know. At least all the way to book 8. But for some reason, I just completely stalled. I completely lost steam to continue. And I've been reading other things. And I was supposed to start writing this month. I really, really wanted to do NaNoWriMo again this month. But I think that setting myself up for that pace is bad for me. It worked last year. I had a lot of fun doing it. But I don't have a story ready. I don't have a character ready. I have ideas. And I've been working with my friend Scott on developing some of those ideas about a character and about a way to portray him and his world and introduce you, the characters, you, the reader, to it all in an interesting way. And I think that I have a good gripping storyline. It's just missing the middle. That's the part that every author seems to struggle with, is the middle. And so I don't want to start on that yet. So what I'm working on now is a bit of a hybrid of what I intended to do with No Rogues Allowed. And I think that we'll talk about it at some point in the future. I don't want to talk about it right this minute, but I am writing. I have been writing for the past few days. I'm just not participating in NaNoWriMo. I'm not writing a novel. I'm not writing a short story. I mean, I guess I am kind of writing a short story, but I have been writing for 2 days now. I haven't been publishing any of my word counts or anything because this year that doesn't matter to me. This year I just want to put a complete story on paper and figure out if I can make it do what I want it to do. And that is tangentially related to the project I started last year with No Rogues Allowed. So if you followed along with that and you liked it, hopefully this new thing will be a thing that's interesting to you. And hopefully my goal is to start small. Like, it's a big problem I have, is I want to start small and I never do. I always go big. I swing for the fence because swinging for the fence is fun. The problem is getting that done is really difficult. So I'm starting with something tiny, like minuscule, and I'm hoping to grow it and then figure out how to make that accessible to you so that you can experience what's going on in my head. I know that's a whole lot of vague hand-waving, but I promise you I've been working on it, and I have been writing. And I have been reading other things, not The Wheel of Time, that are helping me figure that whole thing out. Yeah. So, we might talk about it this week. Well, that would be tomorrow, because this is Thursday. Probably next week. If I remember, I will talk to you about what's going on in my head and where I'm headed with this whole thing. The problem is, as always, if I tell you, I lose steam for it. And so I'm just going to kind of hold it in and let it churn and see what happens, at least for a little while. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends with wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is inculpate. It is a verb meaning to incriminate, blame, or charge with a crime. Thanks to our connections, none of us were inculpated in the nightclub melee. Inculpate. I-N-C-U-L-P-A-T-E. See, so yesterday was inculcate, and today is inculpate. Inculpate. So the emphasis in this word is on the cool, and the emphasis yesterday was on in, and so that's why I was really mixing that whole thing up. I'm still not saying this right. It's inculpate. 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 I don't know. It's something like that. Whereas yesterday was inculcate. Inculcate and inculpate. I hope you can hear the difference. I mean, obviously they're different words, but I meant the inflection.